Thank you, Emma, for starting with the critique. My name is Juley and I will be continuing with the critique of the Clinical Practice Guideline using the Agree To tool. Picking up where Emma left off, Domain 4 looks at clarity of presentation. This covers items 15 to 17 and assesses the criteria of clarity. Item 15, the recommendations are specific and unambiguous, was given a quality score of 5. Because the recommendations were presented inconsistently, they identified the intent and purpose and relevant population, however they were not specific enough. For example, the recommendation states, ensure that effective mouth care is given to people with swallowing difficulty after stroke in order to decrease the risk of aspiration pneumonia. This identifies population and purpose, however it lacks specificity by failing to state what the effective mouth care is. Item 16 is the different options for management of the condition or health issue are clearly presented. This was given a quality score of 5 because different management options were presented, including the use of carbonated water, the Fraser free water protocol and a range of swallowing exercises, as well as modification of diet fluids, nil by mouth and nasogastric feeding. However, for each of these options, the population was not described. The information was easy to find because it was located in a PICO table. Item 17, the key recommendations are easily identifiable, was given a top score of 7 because the recommendations were presented together. They were easily identifiable in the guideline, which was in a gold coloured box and the font was bold. The descriptions were also well written and clear and concise, and they were appropriately selected and reflect the key messages of the guideline. Domain 5 looks at applicability and covers items 18 to 21. This assesses the criteria of scheduled review, implementation and evaluation. Item 18, the guideline describes facilitators and barriers to its application, was given a quality score of 4. General barriers were described as well as facilitators to implement them. However, no specific strategies to overcome barriers are suggested, and this was not easy to find. We suggest that the guideline would benefit from the use of headings. Item 19, the guideline provides advice and or tools on how the recommendations can be put into practice, was given a quality score of 5. This was found in a separate document called Practice-Based Implementation Advice, where models of care were described. However, the advice was very general and did not cover all recommendations, and specifically did not cover the recommendations for management of dysphagia. There were also no specific tools provided, for example, checklists, how-to manuals, barrier analysis, and tools to capitalize on guideline facilitators. Item 20, the potential resource implications of applying the recommendations have been considered, was given a top score of 7 because the cost effectiveness was reviewed in each area very thoroughly by health economists. The methods were clearly described in table formats, they were clear and concise, and were also easy to find within the guideline. There was no negatives. Item 21, the guideline presents monitoring and or auditing criteria, was given a quality score of 3. This was found in a separate document called Implementation Guide, which provides checklists for models of care and suggested rehabilitation teams. The negatives are that there was no specific criteria to audit the implementation or adherence to recommendations, and for the dysphagia management recommendations, only one of the 5 is measurable, which was offer swallowing therapy at least 3 times a week to people with dysphagia after stroke. Domain 6, Editorial Independence, covers items 22 to 23, and this assesses the criteria of the development team. Item 22, the views of the funding body have not influenced the content of the guide, was given a quality score of 4 because the guideline identified the funding body, which was easy to find, being in the first few chapters of the guideline. However, they did not explicitly state the funding body did not influence the content of the guide, which could present as some sort of bias. Item 23, competing interests of the guideline development group members have been recorded and addressed, was given a quality score of 6 because all members were required to state their interests at the onset and every meeting, so it was quite regular. It was located in the appendix, which is very appropriate, and they state that measures were taken to minimise the effect of competing interests, for example, withdrawing the member. The guideline also states that no interests were declared that required actions. However, there were no details about how these decisions were made. Overall, The assessment of the guideline came out with a quality score of 5, and we would recommend that the guideline to be used by clinicians, but with some modifications. The areas of strength include clinical applicability, validity, reliability, and clarity. There was a clear scope and purpose to this guideline, and the rigour of development was strong. It was well written and also very clearly presented. We would recommend modifications in the areas of scheduled review, implementation, development team, clinical flexibility and evaluation to improve the overall quality of the guideline. It lacked in external review and limited information was provided about auditing criteria, which is important for implementation of the recommendations. The key recommendation that our team has chosen for implementation is ensure that effective mouth care is given to people with difficulty swallowing after stroke in order to decrease the risk of aspiration pneumonia. And now I'll pass on to Caroline, who will introduce and talk about the resource our team has developed.